everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Oriire podcast, the podcast that tells African stories. I'm Halima.
And I'm Ceci. Today we're going to be embarking on an exploration of Ethiopia's history and geopolitics. So get ready because we're going to go into the depths of this nation's past and navigate its complex geopolitical landscape. Today we are joined by our guest from Ethiopia. His name is Tam. Hi Tam, welcome.
Hi, I'm Tam Rundale.
Nice to meet you, Tam. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself? Like, where are you from in Ethiopia? Where are you now? How are you today? Anything interesting?
As you mentioned in the title, my background is related to the title of the podcast. As I mentioned, my name is Tam Rundale, and I studied global studies and international relations as an undergraduate, and diplomacy and international relations in postgraduate level. And during my college years, I participated in local politics in Andines Party, and after graduating, I worked in one of Addis Ababa's administration city. It's called Bole City. I worked there as a capacity building officer. After that, I joined the Foreign Ministry in 2014, and I worked for the Foreign Ministry for 2 years.
That's really interesting. You sound like you have a good grasp on like international relations and stuff like that. So that's really awesome. So first, we'd like to know like what period of Ethiopia's history you'll be talking to us about. Is it like ancient Ethiopia or is it modern Ethiopia?
Yeah. My fascination is with modern Ethiopian history, but I also like the medieval and the early ages. But everything is connected. So currently, in the past 3 years, I've been working as a freelancer in the media and communication sector, and I'm much also interested in local politics. So general fascination is with modern Ethiopian history.
Okay, so you're a generalist. You know a lot about the medieval history and a lot about modern or relatively modern history as well. So let's do an overview.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm not a journalist. That will be. I worked as transcribing, research assistant, and other jobs. No, not specifically journalism. In the last 3 years.
Okay. Oh no! I didn't say journalist. I said generalist. Like know about the general history.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So why don't you tell us a little bit about ancient Ethiopia, about the medieval history of Ethiopia?
That is a vast subject, but I will give you a short summary. Generally, when you talk about Ethiopian history, it usually starts with the Axumite Empire. That is the most famous one. The Axumite Empire used to be powerful in East Africa during, I think, starting from 4 BC or 300 BC or 400 BC. So it is a long empire. I think it stayed in ruling the East African coastal areas and northern Ethiopia for more than 1,000 years. So, but the most famous turn of event is the Axumite Empire became a Christian empire during the 4th century. Syrian priest with his followers came to Ethiopia and tried to evangelize some of the people in the courtyards, during the people around the princes and the kings. So one of the kings, I think, called Ezana, and Ezana converted, I think, in the 4th century. So after the 4th century, the Axumite kingdom became a Christian empire. So before that, there was a mix of traditional and Sabian religions. There is a connection to Southern Arabia, Yemen, and there are archaeological evidences related to Southern Arabia in both Eritrea and Axum, but it is a controversy. Some Ethiopian historians believe that most of the Axumite descendants doesn't come from Yemen, but the reverse happened because the Axum Empire used to administer southern Arabia until the 7th century. Before the coming of Islam, Axumite Empire used to administer southern Arabia, currently Yemen and currently southern Saudi Arabia. And they used to appoint rulers for southern Arabia, and there was a famous rebellion before the Islamic Empire came, and our kings used to send soldiers to control resistance from southern Arabia, because there were different forces working in southern Arabia. There were the Jewish merchants in the southern Arabia. There were traditional leaders. There were so many tribes. So Axumite kings used to be more powerful, especially in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 7th century. But in the 7th century, as you know, Prophet Muhammad started the movement related to the Islam, and I have a very limited understanding of Islamic history, but our Axumite empire future intertwined with Islamic Caliphate in Arabia. So the decline of Axumite empire started in the 7th century, and I think it ended in the 10th century. There was a famous Jewish queen which invaded Axumite territories from northeastern Ethiopia. She is she is one of the unpopular figures in Ethiopian history. She is called Gudit, and internal pressures and external pressures from the Islamic Caliphate ended the Axumite Empire. And after the Axumite Empire, there is another empire called Zagwe Dynasty, which is a very religious dynasty, and that ruled mainly northern Ethiopia, and especially what we call Ageo, Amara, and southern Tigray. They didn't even control the coastal areas, so they were a little bit isolationist, but they have relations with Jerusalem because their wish is to build the new Jerusalem in Ethiopia. And Lalibela, one of the great destinations in Ethiopia is Lalibela, that was intended to be the second Jerusalem because Jerusalem was under pressure from the Ottoman Empire at that time. And I think it was surrounded by Ottoman Empire in the 12th century. And before the end of, I think, European Crusade, the Ethiopian rulers were intending Lalibela to be the second Jerusalem. There might be a little bit theological controversy on that. And this is generally the early ages and close to the Middle Ages. But the Middle Ages, the medieval Ethiopian history probably started in Solomonic dynasty. The Solomonic dynasty came, I think, at the end of the 13th century, and at the end of the 13th century.
Oh, before we move on to the Middle Ages,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Before we move on to the Middle Ages, I just want to interject because I know you mentioned that the Axum eventually became a Christian empire, Christian kingdom, right? And I know that Ethiopia was one of the first regions to adopt Christianity, like in the world. So can we talk a little bit about the role that Christianity played in Ethiopia and in Ethiopian history?
Yeah. That's why I said it is a vast history. It is a very long history. To say Christianity started in 4th century is a little controversial. Ethiopia officially became a Christian state in the 4th century, but the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims Christianity came to Ethiopia in the 1st century. If you remember the story about the Ethiopian eunuch, do you remember the story about the Ethiopian eunuch? One of the disciples, Philip, helped him to convert. If you read Acts, there is one Ethiopian eunuch who's returning from Jerusalem, and one of the disciples of Christ testified to him about the gospel, and he was baptized in the way to southern Israel, I think. And the Orthodox Church claimed the first Christian to be that eunuch, and that eunuch came to Ethiopia and helped to evangelize some of the community in Ethiopia. And that eunuch probably is close to some of the rulers in the Axum kingdom. That didn't lead to the conversion of Ethiopia as a state. Ethiopia didn't officially become a Christian state, I think, until the 4th century. And as I mentioned, and the most well-known history is, I think, there is one famous priest who came from Syria, and Ethiopian Orthodox Church is very close to Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and there is a famous Syrian priest who came in the 4th century, and he's the one who evangelized the royal families.
Well, that's really cool. Yeah. So basically, Ethiopia managed to maintain its independence during like the European colonialism. What do you think were the key factors that allowed Ethiopia to resist this like colonization?
When it comes to colonization, the most important thing is, as I mentioned, it is related to our identity. We don't have a technological advantage against Europeans. We didn't have institutions like Europeans, but the most important thing, I think, it is identity. Currently, it is controversial. As I mentioned earlier, the good thing I mentioned the importance of Ethiopian Christianity and the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, because until the modern history, not even in the modern history, until 40 years ago, Orthodox Church to be the official religion of Ethiopia. It stops becoming the official religion of Ethiopia during the middle of 1970s when the communist military government came. So our identity helped us to overcome the superiority complex from the Europeans, because Amharic is to be the official language of the kingdom in the Middle Ages, in the early ages, even in the modern ages. So Amharic is spoken all over the country, whether you are educated or whether you are a trader, you probably speak Amharic. So Amharic and the Orthodox Church help shape the identity of Ethiopia, and that identity of Ethiopia helped to encounter the superiority complex from the Europeans. And the other thing will be, it is not only about our identity is not only linked to the Orthodox Church and Amharic, but the rulers used to have a federal system, which is not appreciated by many current intellectuals, because every major region contributed to the war against Italians. And whether you are from Western Ethiopia, Southern Ethiopia, whether you are Muslim or traditional religious follower, every king in Ethiopia contributed a soldier to the campaign, to the Adwa battle. So the wisdom of the leaders and the traditional federalized system, I think only once or twice a year, the rulers of these kingdoms and provinces send some kind of gifts and taxes to the king. So it is a traditional loose federal system. So that helped also to stop the aggression of Europeans from every corner.
I think that's a really good explanation and a really good reason why they were able to resist colonization. And I want to contrast the concept of Ethiopia already having kind of a federalist structure makes sense as to why they were able to resist better than other countries that did not. Because, for example, a country like Nigeria was like full of different tribes who had their own completely different kingdoms. I mean, it wasn't really a country at the time. It was just a bunch of different tribes kind of brought together. So I guess it was easier for them to exploit that division because there was no unity there. So yeah, I think that's a very interesting perspective. Why don't we talk a little bit now about kind of the modern political landscape of Ethiopia? So what's it looking like now in present day?
The current one.
Sorry.
You mean the current political system?
Yes. Currently, how is it? Yes.
The provinces used to be traditional kingdoms or geographical provinces. So they were not fully ethnic or typically ethnic federal. It was traditional loose federalism. They are obliged to pay taxes once in a year or twice in a year, and that will satisfy the king and the central government. And it was a loose federal system. But in time of wars, the king had the power to mobilize soldiers from every kingdom and every province. To come to the current system, it is purely ethnic. There are major ethnic groups in Ethiopia like Amhara, Oromo, Gurage, Tigray, Afar, Sidama, more than 80 ethnic groups. 80 ethnic groups. So the current political landscape, it was shaped in 1983 after the EPR led by mainly dominated by TPLF overthrow the Marxist regime. They are by name Marxists. They are not practically Marxists. The military Marxist regime. So they bring ethnic federalism, and that ethnic federalism allocate resources and power according to your affiliation and your population size. But during the first 27 years, the most dominant group used to be TPLF. And if you follow Ethiopian war, and TPLF agreed to share power with other groups during the 2018 transition, and when they controlled only their regions. But they used to be predominant all over the country. They used to control defense, the intelligence, and even the trade and economics. And there was only symbolic ethnic federalism during the first 27 years. And some people were hoping in the first 27 years we experienced effect federalism, effect ethnic federalism. So now we're gonna enjoy a true federalism, coming to federalism, not the other way around.
So basically, in recent years, as we all know, like Ethiopia has faced various internal conflicts and challenges. So how do these like conflicts and dynamics affect Ethiopia's geopolitical standing and its ability to address regional issues?
Currently, I think we have 11 regions having their own police force, a basic thing, but having additional special forces that are in between the military and the police forces is a major challenge. We saw it in the last 4 years, in the last 5 years, and the government is trying to solve that. So I hope they have a good luck. But the political timing was tough time, and the challenge to disband the regional forces created a major challenge for the government, because they tried to disband the Amara regional forces before other regions. They didn't try to disband the forces simultaneously. If they try to disband regional forces simultaneously and integrate them to the military or the local police, that would have been a great move. The challenge is we don't have a democratic system and we don't have a merit-based system. So most of the leaders come to power because of their ethnic affiliation. And that was a challenge, because when you are loyal to only your ethnic group, you will not have a national perspective, a regional perspective, or global perspective.
Thank you so much. So I think it's nearing time for us to wrap up the episode. So let's end it on a bit of a lighter note. Can you just tell us some of your favorite things about Ethiopia? Maybe things that someone who is trying to visit Ethiopia might be interested in, like what's the food like? What's the what are the tourist attractions, etc.
I spent most of my time in Addis Ababa. Like, I was born in Hawassa, in the capital of the southern region, but I came to Addis Ababa when I was 6 years old. So I spent 90% of my life in Addis Ababa, and I spent 2 years in Europe. I lived in Sweden for 1 year and a half and 6 months in Germany. So after I returned from Europe before 5 years, and the first thing I missed when I returned to Ethiopia was the food. And we have our own traditional food. We have what we call kitfo. It was minced meat with butter, and unless you see it in person, it is hard to explain, but I can send photos. And we have so many traditional from almost every ethnic group, and the food is very interesting and very diverse. We have a diverse cuisine. I missed some of the historical places. We have famous palace and church in Intoto. It is very close to Addis Ababa. It was the capital of Addis Ababa for first time before Addis Ababa, but currently it is part of Addis Ababa. And we have places like Ankober, which used to be a capital of Shawa during Minilik. And Minilik was first king of Shawa, then the king of Ethiopia. And we have also Gondar. It used to be a capital of Ethiopia during the medieval times. And also Axum. These are the must-see places. Also Harar. Harar is very interesting. It was one of, I think, UNESCO registered it one of major Islamic sites. I think it was registered because it used to be also Islamic center. I think one of the top 4 Islamic centers maybe in the world. So these are the places. But I am from southern Ethiopia. We have so many beautiful natural adventurous places, and also there is one what you call Sophomore Cave. It is a famous cave. There was a famous theologian, Islamic theologian from Baghdad who went to Ethiopia, I think in the early stages of Islam, and I don't know whether it is linked to the Shiite or the Sunni sect, but Sophomore Cave is a very famous site for many Muslims. I don't think it is a Sunni scholar. Most of the current what you call Salafists and Wahhabists, they don't recognize it, but so far is a major Islamic center. I think it may be linked to the Sufi and Shia tradition. Other one of them.
Okay, thank you very, very much. This has been a very, very interesting episode. I'm sure that our listeners have learned a lot about Ethiopian history. Halima, do you have anything to add?
I just want to say a big thank you to Tam for the very informative and enlightening episode. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. Do you have any social media or anything, or like how do you get people to contact you?
I'm not that very active, but I prefer Twitter more than Twitter and Instagram are the most interesting for me. At Instagram, I think one of your producers, Kola, sorry for the pronunciation, Kolaole, have my Instagram account.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so you can check in the description for his Instagram account, and his Twitter account is at Tamiru Endale. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Let me spell it just for you guys who are listening. That's TAMIRUENDALE. So go ahead and follow him on there and maybe talk a little bit with him about Ethiopian history. I don't know. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming, Tam.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and tell your friends. To stay updated, you can also follow us on social media. On Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, we are Oriire_Africa. On TikTok, we are Oriire Africa. And on YouTube, we are Oriire. Oriire is spelled ORIIRE.
You can also find us on our website, which is oriire.com, where we have articles about African mythology, history, and food. Contact us via our website or social media if you'd like to come on the podcast. We'd definitely love to have you. If you want to support us, you can do so by subscribing to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/OriireAfrica. And all of this will be listed in our description box below. Thank you.
Thank you.